What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to Stocks by the Numbers, and I just wanted to take a quick look here. I mean, honestly, I really have nothing to say because it just continues higher, but wanted to take a quick look here at Nvidia, everyone's favorite stock, ticker symbol NVDA, listed here on the NASDAQ. Stock right now about $950 a share, 950 and a half. Down about 3 1/3 points, about 1/3% here on the day, and everyone is awaiting these earnings coming out today after market close. Estimates sitting here on the EPS side, $5.60 a share. On the revenue side, over $24.5 billion for the quarter the company is up to here with these estimates. And of course, in my opinion, I mean, I guess we can give them the benefit of the doubt, since of course you see that basically the stock goes up no matter what. And again, I'm not taking away from the growth of the company. I'm not taking away from the increased demand. And we can see we went from 6 billion up to over 7 billion. And then we essentially almost doubled here to 13.5 up to 18 billion, beating these estimates by almost 2 billion. And then same thing here last quarter, 22.1 billion. This company is now up to on estimates of only 20.4 billion. So in my opinion, again, I have to say, it almost seems like I feel they're kind of helping this company out. Because if they are growing that rapidly, and literally a couple of quarters ago, we went from 6 to 7 to double to 13 to 18 to 22, then in my opinion, these estimates should be even higher, right? So based off of recent trends, which of course past performance does not dictate future results, we all know that rule, but based off previous performance, if these estimates are 24.59 billion, then in my opinion the company's going to post like 26.25 billion and probably beat by 1.6, 1.8 billion above those estimates. And honestly, it really doesn't matter, because even if you go back here, we can see that even when we did have some slight negativity and the company missed on the profitability side but slightly beat on the revenue side, what happened? The stock popped up and continued to climb anyway, so it really doesn't matter. We all know that essentially a bulk value of these markets is now not only invested into Nvidia, but is basically surrounded by Nvidia and completely reacting off of this company's reports and any news or any catalysts that come out. So, I mean, I guess if I was a betting man, in my opinion, I would just probably continue to ride the wave. I'm not going to sit here and preach that the fundamentals are overvalued, because they were overvalued all the way back here once it broke up and got to 400. I said, in my opinion, the stock was overvalued. Look, I had the trend lines drawn out. We were in this kind of like this upward wedge taking place, and then we reach here. But this was right when the ball dropped. So instead of breaking out of the wedge and dropping down and potentially filling one of these gaps, what happened? We had the January effect. Every fund, every investor repositioned their assets, and everyone took a position in Nvidia. You can see that the volume actually increased compared to previous months here going in. That's called the January effect, where the funds reposition their positions and they kind of cut the ones who are stagnant or who are underperforming, and they roll them into, whatever looks better. So everyone and their brother currently has a position in Nvidia, loves Nvidia, and again, this company, $2.38 trillion market cap. This company is up there with the Microsofts and the Amazons of the world. Of course, the difference is those companies are doing hundreds of billions of dollars a year in revenue. And if we come back down and we look at Nvidia, despite the 100+% jump year over year in revenue, they brought in a touch below 61, as you can see here. So they still technically, no matter what anyone says, they are not on the same level as their big tech peers with a similar or near value market capitalization, if you will. So for people to come out and simply say Nvidia is overvalued, I think it should pull back. Those people are not crazy, right? I mean, we really have to call it like we see it. But again, if we're just kind of under the impression that, hey, everything's hunky-dory and it doesn't matter about, inflation or GDP or, slow job growth, or again, we have home sales were down now for 2 months in a row, right? Everyone supposedly is banking on real estate. That's pushing everything up. But again, home sales down 2 months in a row, but we're just going to sweep that under the rug. It doesn't matter. Markets are still stable, flat, slightly green. So if we're just no matter what going on the up and up, then in my opinion, this is essentially the horse that's leading the race. So in the current moment, unless we have some drastic economic landscape changes here, in my opinion, I would just continue to ride the wave. Chances are, based on what we're seeing, we're probably going to get above $1,000 a share, when in my eyes they don't deserve it. And then they're probably going to stock split again, even though they were overvalued from the moment they split last time. But it's not going to matter. So Nvidia is just a massive winner. We know they're the leader in the AI space. They're consistently developing phenomenal new chips and whatnot that everyone's basically going to want and need. And yeah, I mean, again, I don't even know what to say. I know people ask me all the time, oh, you think they're going to beat earnings? Do you think they're going to miss? It doesn't matter. Usually they consistently beat more times than not. And again, a perfect example back here, even when they did miss on a metric, it didn't matter because the stock continued to go higher. So, it's just going to be one of those situations. But I will say this, though, before we go any further, shout out to, let me get his name. This was a doctor friend of mine who came in to the Discord. Okay, of course I cannot find him. Yeah, PocPoc92, I believe it was. And PocPoc said, oh, you should mention this ETF to people. NVDL. This is Granite Shares 2x long Nvidia daily ETF. And it essentially moves with Nvidia, right? This is an ETF. This is a bullish long ETF, right? That basically moves 2 times what Nvidia moves. And we have similar ETFs like this, not only with a bunch of other stocks, but also with the major indices as well, right? If we look at something like, hold on, I know I'm going off on a tangent, but see, we have something like this, like the ProShare Short on the Dow 30. That's an ETF that is also... oh no, wait, what was the other symbol? See, now I can't... it's escaping me, but I'm sure you guys appreciate what I'm saying. We have the ETFs out there. There are the ETFs that straight up track, like the S&P, the NASDAQ, and the Dow, and then there are also 2X and 3X bull and bear ETFs that move 2 and 3 times as much as the underlying security. So something like this, I just wanted to bring to your attention. Again, shout out to PocPoc92. But this is the Granite Shares 2x long Nvidia daily ETF. And you can see that it essentially moves with Nvidia, but moves twice as much, right? So we can see, even looking at this chart here, it essentially looks identical. However, Nvidia's up 235% in this time frame, and we can see that NVDL is up 437% in this time frame. So if you did want a potential cheaper play on Nvidia, but you still feel that overall the stock itself will continue to climb, then you could potentially consider something like an NVDL. Again, right now trading at about 43 1/3 per unit. And, Nvidia was down about 0.3%, so you can see that this is down roughly 0.6%. But, that is a much cheaper play to play off the continued growth of Nvidia if you do believe that the stock will continue to climb. I just thought I'd mention that again. Shout out to PocPoc92. But now we have to bring up Nvidia, and we can see if we look at these pivot points here, we can see we currently just recently bounced off of this pivot point here of about 938.83, right? And the stock's holding 950. So we know that usually we kind of have this flatness. And, back in the day, we would have these big pumps going into earnings because everyone was sitting there like, yeah, there's probably like a 98% chance that they're going to beat earnings, right? So there would be a lot of new volume coming in, a lot of traders coming in just to catch the big pop after the positive report, get in, get out, right? That's one of the rules I mentioned, in my opinion, with this market. I still feel this is a trader's market, unless, of course, you're looking at big tech. If you're holding something like an Nvidia or a Google for the long term, that's obviously a different story. But we just looked at something like a STEM, right? So if you haven't been holding that for a year or two and just got in recently, again, in my opinion, something like that could give it back at any moment. So bang, bang, we're in, we're out. It's a trader's market. Book the profits. No one ever went broke securing profits. But again, bounced off of this level, and we can see that the stock is basically flat here, down 1/3%, nothing to write home about. And we can see the next resistance level up here above 1,000 at 1,013.63 cents. So in my opinion, that's probably chances are where the stock is going to go. If for any reason they say, oh, all of a sudden, there's no more demand, or for some reason if they miss like that revenue number, which I really don't know if you can really bet against Nvidia right now. But we could see a pullback here, maybe to the 50-day, 886.42. But we can see that even back in April when we had the break, it almost immediately tried to reclaim it. And then we had the drop down, and then it just immediately got back above it. And that only took about 2 weeks. So the problem with Nvidia is the fact that it's so expensive, right? And it moves so many dollars per day that even if you did just want to buy like the $1,000 options, it's probably going to cost you an arm and a leg. That's why I figured I'd mention the NVDA 2X Bull ETF on Nvidia, and also just look at some potential levels that we can see on a pullback, maybe if it happens. 886.42 here on the 50-day moving average. Next pivot point, 847.44. If we completely drop down to one of my trend lines, as you see, we're looking at like the low 700s. So this stock can seriously take a haircut. But again, in my opinion, probably not, right? I mean, realistically, in my eyes, it should. Even if they beat, it should drop back down to 800, 700, in my opinion. Start to come back down to earth, maybe. But again, being that that really hasn't happened ever with this stock for years, the chance of it happening right now might be slim to none. But, again, something like Nvidia, in my eyes, this is an investment. It would be very, very hard to trade because, again, I feel that they are immensely overvalued. And the problem with trading, with trying to, step in and buy some out-of-the-money calls for this Friday, hoping for the pop, remember, the stock is up huge. So even if they do beat and the stock could not move, it could remain flat, and then you get screwed. So that's why, again, in my opinion, something like this, definitely more, I personally lean more towards an investment for Nvidia as opposed to trying to catch a trade on Nvidia. I mean, there may have been people yesterday who stepped in and bought calls. Oh, they're reporting tomorrow. They're going to run up going into earnings, and, they have to beat it. It's going to be great. And as you can see, we're down 5.5 points right now, right? So if you bought those calls, right now you're just sitting there kind of just waiting, hoping for a reversal, and then kind of praying that the stock pops to 990, 1,000 after hours so you can make a couple of bucks. So that's why, in my opinion, probably easier to invest into a company like this as opposed to trying to trade it. But even though the RSI has been climbing here on the daily, we can see it's still sitting here at 61, so it still has room to grow. And the MACD has been climbing nicely after the big drop and then crossing upward recently. But again, even something like the RSI can't be watched. And it's funny because anytime I talk about another stock in the Discord or in a video and I feel it should go up or it should go down, people always try to tell me, oh, well, look at the RSI. It was oversold. That's why it's running up. And you thought it was going to go down. Or you thought this was going to go up, but the RSI was 73. So it started to sell off. It was overbought, right? And again, it makes me laugh because, either that's a rule or it's just happenstance and hindsight and coincidence. And granted, I know it's not all of those latter things because I understand the RSI is a pretty weighted indicator. But again, if we have something like Nvidia that is essentially above that 70 benchmark from the time the ball dropped basically until mid-March, then it can't be a rule if there's multiple exceptions, and especially if it's isolated with just the big tech sector, just because everyone's blowing AIs and data centers and whatnot. So I don't know. In my opinion, it does just personally aggravate me a little bit when when people mention things like that, because if it's a rule, then it's a rule across the board, right? And just like when I was calling for the big sell-off with Tesla, pointing out the two gap ups that it had, saying that we have to eventually come back down and fill the gaps, right? And that usually is a rule. Oh, gaps always fill. That was the same. That was the same for decades. And now all of a sudden, people chime in, probably who own Tesla, and these people chime in and they're like, oh, well, that's not always a rule and it doesn't always happen. It's like, yeah, usually it does always happen. You just don't want it to happen because you may have a position in Tesla. And again, I'm not personally bashing anyone. You guys know, any one of you who are involved in Nvidia, I hope the thing keeps going at $3,000 a share and you guys, make hefty returns. I hope everyone makes $1 million. But again, I'm always honest. I always call it like we see it. But chances are, again, Nvidia probably going to report good news. Even if numbers just meet estimates and don't blow them out of the water, I'm sure they're going to say, hey, listen, our deals are up and, we have a big growing backlog and, we have big demand from these people and those people, and they're probably going to raise guidance again, more than likely. So chances are $1,000 a share, in my opinion. Even on the weekly, look at this, again, on the weekly, from the time the ball dropped in 24 until mid-April, the RSI got above 90 and was well above the benchmark for about 4 straight months. And again, this is on the weekly, not the daily. The daily was about 3 months. The weekly, almost 4 months. And then again, you have a period like this, right? Our massive 2023 rally as inflation was going through the roof. We randomly kept rallying. But you can see here, this was what? March of 23? And this goes to what? Mid-August of 23? Most stocks would not do that. You understand what I'm saying? That's why that's what aggravates me when people try to when people try to mention something like an RSI or a MACD to me and say, oh, well, look at this, that's why that one didn't work out. It's like, yeah, it's a rule for everyone except a handful of companies that are the most popular amongst traders. But even right now on the weekly, look at the RSI, 7162, right? So technically, according to my tech analysis traders that are all around there, I mean, again, a daily RSI, what, 62? Weekly RSI, almost 72. So technically, even if the company beats, I mean, they should drop just like Palo Alto did, right? That's what people try to tell me. The RSI was too high. And even though I said, in my opinion, Palo Alto would beat earnings, which they did, and they increased guidance moving forward and lifted their forecast, the stock still took an 8 to 9% hit after hours. Right? Supposedly because the RSI was too high. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but your RSI on Nvidia is too high. But again, not going to beat a dead horse and, act like a little bitch about it. But chances are Nvidia probably going to keep going higher. Let's check the Bollinger Bands real quick out of curiosity before I let you go. We can see top Bollinger Band on the weekly, 1047.89. Sure, why not? Might as well just bring it up there, get it over with. We switch over here to the daily, we can see after this big drop and now this tight increase, we can see that our Bollinger Bands began to kind of trumpet out and bottom out, and now we're spiking straight up here to create, supposedly, quote, the bottom of the bottoms here of this range. Excuse me. But in my opinion, yeah, conservatively, that 975 mark, I'm sure it'll be no problem. Again, we may see a big spike and a big drop immediately after numbers come out, but chances are, in my opinion, it's probably going to remain high. And then, of course, with these numbers coming out, we cannot forget something like an SMCI, super microcomputer, right? And, of course, all the other tech stocks that are going to feed off of these Nvidia earnings. And this is going back... Yeah, last earnings, this company actually came in light with revenue. However, forecasted that demand is still there, the growth is still there, and I believe they said that the next even 1 to 2 quarters are going to be fine, and the yearly forecast is going to look good. But we did have this recent pop up here. I mean, this is on the daily. It may not look perfect across the board, but we can potentially make the argument that, we're like flagging here, maybe. Which, of course, would kind of make sense that, all of these tech stocks kind of line up in the technicals awaiting a pop from Nvidia news. And then if Nvidia is like, oh, yeah, everything's great, demand is up, everything's great, you could see something like SMCI pop right back up to this trend line here and get back up over 1,000, right? But you guys know how I feel about SMCI. I'm not going to get into it. In my opinion, anyone who looks at these big drops and, gets emotional and views them as negatives, unfortunately, we are not seeing eye to eye, because in my opinion, I would be very, very happy if I had capital to buy this stock that was on its way to 1,300 Long term, in my opinion, $2,400 a share. But again, if I had a stock that ran up like that and finally broke out and got the spotlight on it, and then it dropped 50% in value, in my opinion, I would be dancing, and I would personally be accumulating shares, as you see, because it immediately rebounded. And long term, in my opinion, you're going to be fine. But SMCI probably going to see a little pop off of Nvidia earnings. AMD, not really, but kind of, right? Having these big green chunks up, and now this little sideways kind of consolidation. So, not necessarily a bull flag, if you will, but it did get back above this trend line here that I have drawn out, staying above it. And again, off the news of that Nvidia demand and the earnings beat, we could potentially see a pop, back up to like the 170s, maybe even 180 on something like AMD as well, because we know they all feed off of Nvidia, since apparently Nvidia is like running the world and controlling the world. And I think the last time we looked, don't quote me on this, I think, what was, it was like 6% of like 6% of the value of the S&P is Nvidia, or 6% of global market value is based off Nvidia. I don't remember exactly what it was, but you guys get the idea that Nvidia, chances are, probably going to be on the up and up. And in my opinion, I wouldn't. Oh wait, I had to log off actually. One sec. Yeah, no, that still looks good. Let me recheck AMD. My apologies. Yeah, no, it looks basically the same. Okay. But we know that Nvidia essentially is the powerhouse in the sector, and any of these companies who want to accelerate their business, take their technology to the next level, implement AI, or, get involved with AI themselves, we all know that chances are they're going to be knocking on Nvidia's door. So if you're bullish on Nvidia, I get it. But also at the same time, if you tell me, hey, listen, it's ridiculous, the stock's got to come down, I mean, of course, I'd believe that as well. But, sometimes we can't really bet against populace, And again, if everyone and their brother and their mother and their sister bought Nvidia and is holding it and loves it, and they're bullish on it, then the chances are they're probably going to keep buying it, and all of these funds and analysts are going to keep building positions and maintaining their buy ratings and increasing their price targets, and we're just going to see potentially bigger and better things from here. But we all know that anything can happen with earnings, and the company could come out and say one or two negative things, and then all of a sudden the stock starts tanking. And I know a lot of people are involved, so even if we do start to see a realistic sell-off, again, I just hope it's like a steady, realistic. I hope it's a steady, realistic, honest sell-off, as opposed to just immediately just planking and chunking all the way down here to 800, 700, especially if you just got in recently. But that's it. I'm going to end it there. I'm talking too much like I always do. So once again, this is Stocks by the Numbers. I'm going to thank you guys for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually very quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, they are very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.